الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Okay, first I'd like to thank all of you for coming this afternoon. To talk about this subject, which is broadly under the title "Coffee and Converts." And I'm glad that this sort of an intimate gathering. Perhaps no better example to illustrate the challenges of not only being a convert. Perhaps no greater example is given except in these two letters. Now, this letter, I don't want to show the front because it has a person's personal information, but this is a letter from somebody requesting a Quran. It's a very nice letter. Basically, it says that they have some situation where they don't have financial resources, and they're requesting a Quran. We sent it to them this morning. This, on the other hand, is an opposite kind of letter. This is a letter, you see, is from an anonymous source. They didn't write their address on it. They didn't write their return address on it. And so what it is a cartoon. And in the cartoon, basically Islam is evil, right? And in this cartoon, which they mailed to a mosque, to our mosque, in this cartoon, it shows that not only the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ as a terrorist, but it also says essentially that the person who does not accept Christian doctrine, the idea that Jesus Christ died for your sins, this publication says that such a person is a terrorist. It equates the rejection of a particular Christian doctrine with terrorism. Obviously for the convert, and by the way, I hate this word convert, by the way, but for the convert, there is perhaps the strongest of challenges in that accepting Islam, especially in this day and age, often may mean like having strained relationships, breaking family relationships, or at least having strained relationships, social isolation because the lifestyle of the person who has accepted Islam has changed, suffering from stereotypes, and this happens to a lot of people especially for women, who have accepted Islam, that their family members think that they are on the way to become brides of ISIS or
Not
something.
anymore, alhamdulillah.
So such stereotypes are represented by pamphlets such as this. In addition to that, the convert faces competing ideologies, or I should say, a competition of trends, that exists within the Muslim community. So, should you become a Salafi? Should you become a Shia? Should you become this? Should you become that? So that's also a challenge. And so then the Muslim who has accepted Islam, they say that Islam is a religion of clarity and the religion of guidance, then the Muslim may become very confused because you have this ideology saying this is Islam, you have this ideology saying this is Islam, and they may have completely different outlooks on important facts, important issues. So they don't know, or they could become confused as to which choice that he or she should make. And these types of situations that I'm describing, these types of situations are also faced by people who are born in Muslim families. It's not just a situation that exists with people who convert to Islam, but these situations are faced also by people who are born in Muslim families. And for those of us who are born into Muslim families, there is an added dimension to this. And the added dimension to this is identity struggle. And what I mean by that is to say, for example, someone who was born in the United States from a Muslim family and their family is from Pakistan, or their family is from Egypt, or their family is from wherever, that their parents have a certain culture and a certain worldview, but because their children are born in the United States, they have a different worldview, a different culture, and a different worldview. So the person who is born in a Muslim family has that added struggle of dealing with identity. Like, are they exact? They may not be exactly American, but they're no longer exactly Pakistani or Egyptian or whatever. And this sometimes translates into different, I should say, variant religious perspectives within the same family. So maybe the parents believe in tabarruk, but the children do not believe in that. Maybe the parents believe in shafa'ah, but the children don't believe in shafa'ah. So what I want to do today, and I actually want to make this very brief, is to give some tips on how to deal with these situations. And so there's a handout here. This is a blue paper, but if anyone wants to grab, there's a handout here which if anyone wants to pass it out. Okay, so this is a handout with basically some tips how to deal with those things, and these tips are not necessarily tips that we've made up on our own. These are tips that are gleaned or that are derived from the Quran and the prophetic Sunnah. And I want to mention that they're derived from the Quran and they're derived from the prophetic Sunnah. They're derived from the Quran and the Sunnah because these, essentially the same kind of situations that we have been describing, these situations existed for the early Muslims. So it's very appropriate for us today to look at those things from the Quran and the Sunnah. So the tip number one is have the Quran. You see it's numbered here. So tip number one is to have the Quran as your priority. And this means much more than simply reciting it as a text. Because what a lot of Muslims do is that we learn to recite the Quran as text, but we don't do anything else with it. We just learn to recite it as text. So the Quran should be the number one source, the foundation. And not just a foundation for understanding theology, but really the foundation for your worldview in general. And in addition to this, and this should not be a controversial statement, what I'm going to say, the Quran is the best source of information on the Prophet Muhammad himself. And so, when I say to make the Quran as your priority, I mean not just memorizing text or the recitation of text, but reading it often, studying it, taking notes, taking its ahkam seriously, and arguably, most importantly, allowing the Book of Allah to have an impact on your heart, or your mind, and an impact on your heart. As the Quran itself says, it says, "Inna anzalnahu Qur'anan Arabiyyan la'allakum ta'qilun." It says that it is we, means Allah, who has sent it forth as a pure recitation or pure revelation, so that perhaps, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ, it means in Arabic, so that perhaps you will use your brain, that perhaps you use your mind. So this statement tells us that Islam is not a religion that encourages blind faith. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. Another one says that the Quran is guidance لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. It is for a people who contemplate. So, in terms of those theological trends, should I become this sect or this sect or this mazhab or this mazhab or this these different trends, whether they exist inside of the Muslim community or whether they exist outside of the Muslim community, everything should be filtered through the Quran. On this paper, you'll notice that the word Al-Furqan is mentioned. And this is from an ayah which says, Tabaraka alladhi nazzala furqana ala abdi. That blessed is he who sends forth the Furqan upon his servant. Meaning, and you can use the word filter. Furqan, it means criterion. This is a normal translation. And the criterion basically means filter. That you use the Quran to filter out the truth from the falsehood. تبارك الذي نزل فرقان على عبده ليكون للعالمين نذيرا. So this is the first tip. The second tip is consulting trusted sources for clarification of issues. And the Quran says, it's not mentioned on this paper, but the Quran says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلِ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. It says, ask those who know if you do not know. So meaning that, I should add to that those whom you consult in terms of how to understand your Islam, your Islamic practice, your Islamic doctrine, should be those who have an understanding of your needs, of your language, of your culture, of your background. And this is not some new understanding. If you learn to study fiqh, the history of usul al-fiqh and all that, one of the things you discover is that muftis, you know these people who issue fatwas, that traditionally muftis did not issue rulings for communities with which they did not live in. So Spain is part of the Islamic world. You know, Spain used to be part of the Islamic world. And let's say Iraq is part of the Islamic world. The scholars who live in Iraq would not issue fatwa for the people who live in Spain. It's the same civilization, the same empire. Or I should say same empire, but the same Muslim civilization, right? But they had different circumstances. And in logic, it makes sense. If you don't know if you're not there experiencing their needs, what's written down on paper doesn't mean a thing. Because what's written down on paper may not be relevant for you. It might be relevant for somewhere else. And let me share a real example in the last 7-8 years. In Syria, you know that unfortunately, we have a terrible civil war in Syria. And may Allah lift the civil war from the people of Syria. Ameen. So in Syria, do you know that there has been fatwa that allows for the consumption of cats and dogs? Why? Because in war situation, people are starving. They have no access to food. So obviously, there's not a whole lot of pork, around in Syria. Obviously for that, but we have an allowance in the Quran, don't we? We're allowed to eat that which is normally haram, if it means to survive. So there's scholars there. They said, look, it's halal for you it's lawful for you to eat things which are normally haram. So pork becomes lawful to the Syrians, and any other items which are normally forbidden, they become lawful to the Syrians, but they're not lawful for us here. I don't think that we are so hungry that we have to eat a BLT. I don't think we have to be in that situation. It's also important to have trusted sources in your own midst, in your own community. So if you are in a community in which you do not trust, for example, the Imam of that masjid in terms of giving the information, okay, that's fine. Then find someone else that's local that you can develop a trust for. Make sense so far? Mm-hmm. Okay. So the third tip is staying connected to a loving, nurturing, healthy, moderate Islamic community. And you'll see on the paper that the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is reported to have said, Yadullahi ala jama'a. Or another version says, Ma'al jama'a. That the hand of God is over the community. The other version, Ma'al jama'a, is with the community. So, when I say community, I don't mean a Facebook group. Or I don't know, I don't think they do chat rooms anymore, do they? I don't think chat rooms exist anymore. So I don't mean a Facebook group. I don't mean an internet situation. By community, I mean a physical community, not in a digital community or an electronic community. A physical community with real people, with physical people who have their strengths and their weaknesses, who have their virtues and their sins. This is what I mean by the term physical community. And because in a physical community, it has something called support. I mean, someone can say on the internet they love you all day long, but it doesn't mean anything until they actually do something to show their love. So community means support. It means moral support. It means physical support. It means financial support. And it means, most importantly, it means spiritual support. Because, so if we understand community that way, then now we understand the hadith. Yadullahi ala jama'a. Because it is in such a healthy environment. This is where the hand of God is. Yadullahi ala jama'a. The fourth thing, the fourth tip mentioned here, and this might be controversial, but I think it's important, is to take your Islamic development in stages according to what you are able to do. And so this is important because this is something that I would say that people who are born Muslim, that we do not understand. When we are encountering those who have accepted Islam from another background. So someone, they say their kalima, they accept Islam, they say the shahada, they accept Islam. And so then the next day, somehow we expect them to be a hafiz. We expect them to give up music. We expect them to change their name to a name which they themselves cannot pronounce. Really, we expect them to do, we expect them to become, if not a saint, at least to become a clone of somebody who was walking around in 7th century Arabia. This is what we tend to expect. And this is a wrong expectation. And so one must learn how to swim before even thinking of going to the deep end of the ocean. You must at least know how to swim. So, and this what I'm saying is not some sort of liberal westernized principle. This is firmly based in the Quran and the Sunnah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَسْتَطَعْتُمْ. It means to exercise taqwa. I think everybody here understands the word taqwa. Reverence. Express your reverence, your awe of God. Express it according to your capacity. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَسْتَطَعْتُمْ. So this ayah actually forms a principle. Basically, do not become overwhelmed. Go slowly. Literally, go slowly. There was a case recently, or you shouldn't use the word case, but there was a situation recently where there was a person who accepted Islam, and they are in the professional work setting. So when they have their lunch break, they would go offer their prayers. Now, they didn't know the difference between sunnah and fard. So can you imagine on your lunch break, right, that you're praying the Salatul Dhuhr, the 2 or 4 rak'ahs before the sunnah, before the fard, then the 4 fard, and then to sunnah afterwards. So 4, 8, 10 rak'ahs on your lunch break, you no longer have an opportunity to eat lunch. Because the person didn't know that there's a difference. And so there is a difference between voluntary and obligatory. So the fard, let's say for example, the 4 rak'ahs of your noon prayer, this is obligatory. But the sunnah is not obligatory. So know your circumstances. If you're in a work situation, it's probably very difficult to pray all the sunnah. It's very difficult. But it's easier if you concentrate on the obligatory. Make sense? It's easier if you concentrate on the obligatory. Another example of working up to your taking it step by step. Another example for that is the Quran, and I'm actually going to go this in the last example. Right? And the Quran prohibits alcohol. However, it did not prohibit alcohol as a random prohibition. What happened is this: the Arabs, they love themselves their alcohol. So the Quran comes, this is a Medinan verse, and it says, "La taqrabu salata wa antum sukara." It says, don't come close to prayer while drunk. How many times a day do we pray? 5. But you don't get a prize for that answer. So we pray 5 times a day. So people who are used to drinking alcohol, now they have a situation where they can't be drunk when they come for prayer. So what happens is slowly they're getting out of that habit, because basically every couple hours you have to do salah. Every couple hours is what's happening. So you don't have time you just don't have time. As someone says here, nobody have time for that. So you don't have time to get drunk. So slowly, gradually it was removed. It is only after that the final prohibition came, that where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا الْخَمْرُ وَالْمَيْسِرُ رِجْمٌ مِنْ عَمْلِ الشَّيْطَانِ فَاجْتَنِبُوهُ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. That alcohol is a disgusting product of Satan. So shun it. فَاجْتَنِبُوهُ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. Shun it, so that perhaps you will have success in life. So isn't that a wise thing? So Allah didn't make you just right away do it, because for most people you cannot do it right away. For most people, they cannot give up smoking right away. Even they know that smoking is bad. Most people, they cannot give it up right away. So they have these patches, they have these different things to help the person gradually withdraw, get away from their body being addicted to that thing. So let me move on. There's 2 more points. The number 5 is to learn the salah, the rite, R-I-T-E, the rite or the ritual of salah. Learn this as soon as possible, because the reason for this is that the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is reported to have said, and most of these hadith, this hadith is a Tirmidhi hadith as well. It says that the first thing that God questions a person about on Yawm al-Qiyamah, on the day of resurrection, day of judgment, is that person's worship. And there is another hadith which says that prayer is imadul deen, that prayer is the main pillar of this religion. The last tip is trying to avoid unhealthy environments or unhealthy temptations. So earlier we mentioned the prohibition of alcohol. Prohibition of alcohol, and now I'm mentioning the prohibition of gambling. If a person, and this is common sense really, if a person had that problem before, because these are addictions, so if a person had that problem before, then then as Muslims, then we should avoid the environments in which those things are common. So we shouldn't go to a conference and see a bunch of people in caps and hijabs, at the gambling machines. We shouldn't see that, inshallah. Also here we have another flyer. I'll leave it here. You can look at it later. But this is a schedule for the month of January, and so this was the first event that we've done. It's a humble event, but it's the first event we've done to help into improving our situation as a community, as servants of our Islam. So tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I think most of you know that at 2 o'clock tomorrow we have a Quran study, which everyone comes for. And then Monday, after Salat al-Maghrib, I don't think there'll be a lot of people here for that, but Monday after Salat al-Maghrib, there is a halaqah which is called Introduction to the Study of Hadith. And this is important because, I hope this does not come out the wrong way, so many of us get super confused and misguided in the name of Hadith. So how do we know which Hadith is right, which Hadith is wrong? How do you know what someone has told us is true or what someone has told us is false? So this is sort of the thing that, I know there might be a lot of people for that, but this is sort of things that we should start looking at. And also on the flyer here for January is that we're going to have, inshallah, a lecture potluck every month, and we're going to have one this Wednesday. The last Wednesday of this month, the 29th of January, after Maghrib. And you'll see the details here. And the subject is self-confidence and divine forgiveness, lessons from the Quran and the Sunnah. And so basically the point here is using the religion to fix ourselves. هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم. So this is the point, يزكيهم, that's tazkiyah, of using the religion for what it's meant to be used for. It's not meant to be used in order to impress some woman that you're able to recite the Fatiha, therefore she's going to marry you, do whatever you want. But rather, the religion is here for our rectification. So with that, let me stop. And is there any comments or questions or reflections? Yes, ma'am. Oh.
So with the heightened situation in the world right now, a lot of us full-time hijabi Muslims face a lot of challenges. Like, I've already been asked if I'm from Iran 5 times. I've been told I'm going to hell at the cash register I work at. And I try to respond in a very calm and peaceful way. Is there anything else I can do to protect myself? Or should I say, I don't care about myself so much as protecting the deen and its integrity. So I guess I do care about myself because I'm part of it. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
What more can I do? I mean, I know so many sisters that are stripping their hijabs off, and I refuse to. Point a gun on my head and blow my head off, fine, but I'm not going to remove my hijab, nor will I remove it to get a job, which has always been a challenge since I took this path, but alhamdulillah. But people are getting more antsy and more, should I say, worried about my appearance and am I a dangerous individual behind a check and stand thing. So what more can I do to reassure the community that I am the last person who would ever try to hurt anybody on this earth?
First, let me say that I think it is an act of courage for Muslim women to dress in the Islamic hijab. First, let me say, more so than men. I mean, maybe we can take this off and it won't be an issue. But for women are wearing the hijab on a regular basis, and so it's So it's an act of courage, especially in the circumstances as you have just described. So let me express my respect for that. The second thing I think is, in this case, to look at Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as the example. So, in many ways, what the Prophet Muhammad did, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is that he was able to win people over by his good character. I'm sure all of us have heard this is a very famous story. The story says that there was once a woman who used to do a kind of like a harassment campaign against the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So she would, for example, she would throw trash on a path that she knew that the Prophet would walk on. And so this was such a regular thing that there was an occasion when she didn't show up one day. The Prophet's like, what happened? And so he discovers that she has fallen ill. And so he goes to her and he's very kind with her and that kind of thing, which is a shock. Right? How can, and it's actually a logical shock from her perspective. How can this man who I have been harassing, because this guy is a lunatic, she thinks this guy is a lunatic, like, how can this lunatic, in quotation marks, be so kind to me? There must be something to what his claim is, right? So in other words, his acts of kindness and humanity changed the enmity into love, which is one of the things mentioned in the Quran, by the way. And so, I'm not saying that you have to sit and bear it. I'm not necessarily saying that, but it sounds like you already are. It sounds like you already have your answer. That you're already having these sort of interactions, and that they're probably, if you look at it of course you know your life better than anybody else, but probably, if you stop and think about it, you may have one incident or a few incidents, but maybe your overall experiences in this environment, this job that you're in, or in this environment that you're in, maybe they are actually more positive than they are negative. Mm-hmm. So maybe to start thinking of it in that way as well. The other thing I should say, which is important to say, and I know this may be controversial, is remember that Islam doesn't ask you to be a martyr in the sense of putting yourself in danger. So if there is an occasion or a situation that you are feeling endangered, you don't have to be in that danger. So after 9/11, one of the leading Muslim imams of the United States, he advised the women to alter their dress. And I don't think he meant, going out wearing a miniskirt and stuff like that. I don't think he meant that. But I think what he meant was, being a little more discreet. In an environment, in the environment, knowing the situation, because unfortunately, our sisters do not live. They travel by themselves. So if a bigot comes along, an Islamophobe comes along, unfortunately, women are easy prey, prey, easy prey. So, and that's also the fault of Muslim men, by the way. Muslim men should be more protective of Muslim women, even in small ways, as walking them to the car from the masjid at night. But that is another subject. Anyway, this is my answer to your question. I hope it was a relevant answer. Any other thoughts or reflections?
I guess I'll just end on that
Please.
one thing though. So no matter what I've experienced, including like real bona fide death threats and situations, I say alhamdulillah to it, because I'm experiencing some of the same things that when the birth of Islam, what Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam experienced. All the first Muslims went through everything, if not more, than what we're going through. So in some ways, it's like anything that I've been through is so minor in compared to what they experienced, you know, bringing forth, you know, Islam to the world. So it's not, I don't know, alhamdulillah, it's an amazing thing. They're following in their footsteps. It's an honor and a privilege.
Yeah, and so it is, you know, to be connected to the path of the prophets. You know, it really is. It's a feeling or an experience that's unlike any other feeling or unlike any other experience. So yeah, you're right. It's a very beautiful thing. Yes, sir.
I want to give a little comment on that,
Please.
because my wife wears her hijab all the time, and I always wear it too. But I believe that the hijab is your shield.
Mm-hmm.
It's a protection, and the people that are attacking you know that. So one thing I learned from being in the military, when somebody verbally attacks you, they're not gonna do anything. The person you worry about is the one that's hiding.
Yeah.
Somebody coming from behind. But that one that's in your face doing all that, I mean, you're doing it right by just, okay, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. They're trying to make you come out of your Islam.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to make you be like them.
Yeah.
Somebody call you something, they're really telling you who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how me and my wife, we look at it, you know. I've been knowing racists all my life, you know, and I'm still here.
Alhamdulillah.
And I've been a Muslim since 1971, and I've been through some terrible stuff, and I'm still here. And I know one thing that Allah says in the Quran, that we're all gonna be tested.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know where the test is coming from, but we're all gonna be tested. Everybody, and everybody is gonna be exposed to Islam. You are just part of that exposure, where you work at.
Mm-hmm.
They see you with hijab, that makes their mind, they go, that Muslim. Any other time, they might not have even said the word Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
But because you wear hijab and they see it, it goes in their mind. Everybody in this world is gonna experience Islam. That's what Quran says, that what happened to you. So you're just part of that experience. So am I.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine being black and Muslim in America.
Imagine. But I can't, because I'm not.
Well,
But
I'm just saying, you know, that's the test.
yes,
We have to
most
overcome that.
definitely. Most
We
definitely.
overcome that. We overcome it by being a Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
You don't let them take you out of your deen. Hallelujah.
Never, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
First, I want to ask you, do you know who the first martyr was, sister?
Pardon?
Do you know who the first martyr was?
Martyr. Oh,